Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Today our topic of discussion is development of respiratory system. Our objectives of today's lecture are discuss the formation of lung buds, describe the development of larynx, explain the mechanism of formation of trachea, bronchi and lungs, differentiate between the periods of lung maturation and discuss the congenital anomalies of respiratory system. So as already you have discussed in anatomy lecture that we divide our respiratory system into upper respiratory tract as well as lower respiratory tract. So upper respiratory tract includes nose, nasal cavity and paranasal sinuses and pharynx, and lower respiratory tract include larynx, trachea, bronchi and lungs. So mainly we are going to discuss the formation of larynx, trachea, bronchi and lungs in this lecture, and regarding these nose, nasal cavity, paranasal sinus and pharynx, basically we will talk about their development when we do the head and neck portion inshallah in next year. So our main concern is the respiratory tract, which are basically lower respiratory tract. So when the embryo is fourth week old, or in a fourth week old embryo, the respiratory diverticulum, which is also known as lung bud, or which is also known as laryngotracheal diverticulum, appears as an outgrowth from the ventral wall of the foregut. So it means that at that time, that is at fourth week of development, from the ventral wall or anterior wall of the foregut, a projection of the tissue is coming out, and that projection or outgrowth is known as respiratory diverticulum, or that diverticulum will going to form the respiratory system. So it is coming from the ventral wall of foregut. That is important, we have to understand. Now when we study the structures of the respiratory system, generally in embryology we divide them into epithelial tissue and the rest of the tissue, which contains bones, cartilage, muscles. So most of the lining of the epithelium of respiratory system, not only but also the other systems of the body which we will study later on, they are mainly have endodermal origin, or they are coming from endoderm. As in the foundation you talked about, there are three germ layers: ectoderm, mesoderm and endoderm. So the internal lining of the mucosa of the larynx, trachea, bronchi as well as the part of the lung is entirely coming from the endodermal origin. So epithelium is endodermal, and this diagram is showing the embryo of almost 25 days old, that is in the fourth week. And here we can see this is the part of foregut which is going to be formed in future the digestive system. So from the at the cephalic end, from the ventral wall, this is the ventral wall because this is the anterior part of the embryo and this is the posterior part or dorsal part. So from the ventral wall, this is the ventral wall and this is the dorsal wall. This is dorsal wall and this is ventral wall. So from the ventral wall, as we can see in a large view, this is dorsal and this is ventral. From the ventral wall, a projection of tissue is coming out, and that projection or outgrowth is known as respiratory diverticulum, or it is the start of formation of respiratory system. So it is just lying anterior to our gastrointestinal tract, as we can see. Also in the diagram we can also see that in the cephalic end or toward the head of the embryo we have pharyngeal pouches openings. So in the next few slides we are going to discuss these pharyngeal pouches are mainly from the head and neck structures in part of respiratory system that we are going to discuss few minutes. So as we have discussed, the epithelial lining of the respiratory system is mainly coming from endoderm, and the cartilaginous, muscular and connective tissue components of trachea and lungs are derived from splanchnic mesoderm, which is surrounding the foregut. So as we are talking about that lung bud is appearing, so what the lung bud is actually containing, it is containing the mesoderm as well as the endoderm. Endoderm will form its epithelial lining, and mesoderm, which is splanchnic mesoderm, will form the cartilaginous, muscular and connective tissue components of trachea and lungs. The term we use here is splanchnic, means visceral. Visceral means the viscera of the body, the organs of the body. The other type of mesoderm we have is the somatic mesoderm. Somatic word came from soma, and soma means body or the body wall. So that part of the mesoderm which is forming our body wall structures, or include what we say takes part in the formation of some part of the skeleton, that is the somatic mesoderm. And the part of the mesoderm which is forming the viscera or soft tissues or the organs of the body, that is known as splanchnic mesoderm. So what happened, as this is a diagram or the enlarged view of only that small portion which we have discussed, that this is the foregut, and foregut, if we can see, this is its ventral portion and this is its dorsal portion. So this is a lateral view of the embryo. So we can see that on the ventral wall of the foregut, a projection is or outgrowth of the tissue is coming down, which is mesoderm and endoderm mainly, and that is known as respiratory diverticulum. So as it is projecting out, what happened? A longitudinal tracheoesophageal septum develops, or it is also known as tracheoesophageal ridge, as we have seen here. Ridge means up wall projection. So tracheoesophageal septum develops and divides this diverticulum into a dorsal portion which is going to form the gastrointestinal tract path, and a ventral portion which is going to form the path of respiratory system. Means that this esophageal tracheal ring, a ridge or septum, which are two, one from right and one from left side, if we can see in an anterior view, these two are the anterior view of the foregut and respiratory ridge, and this is the lateral view. So the right and left esophagotracheal ridges, they project, and ultimately these two ridges fuse together and close completely, separating the esophagus with the trachea. So what happened, that the tracheoesophageal ridge project in the midline and divide this tubular structure into two, a ventral tube which is going to form the trachea and a dorsal tube which is going to form the esophagus. And as we have seen here written primordium, primordium is the initial part of the development of the body tissues. So dorsal portion will the primordium of oropharynx and esophagus, and ventral will going to form the larynx, trachea, bronchi, and as well as part of the lung. So whole of the respiratory system will start to develop from here. So this in midline, the septum, which is known as tracheoesophageal septum, will separate the trachea and esophagus in early stages of development, and now the two systems are or starting to form, ventral respiratory and dorsal gastrointestinal tract. So the proximal part of the respiratory diverticle, proximal part means that we are talking about this upper part. The proximal part is the upper part of the respiratory diverticulum, remains tubular and form the part of the larynx as well as trachea, this portion, and the distal part ultimately will divide into two projections which are known as primary bronchial buds. So the initially we have respiratory bud. Its upper part is going to form the larynx and trachea, and its lower part divides into two lung buds, which we name as primary bronchial buds, which are in future become the primary main bronchi. Now we start with that was about the general idea about how the respiratory system is developing out from the embryo. Now we are going to talk about the larynx development. So as we have earlier discussed, the internal lining of the larynx, glandular tissue and epithelium develops from endoderm. And already we discussed that glands are actually the invagination of the epithelium from the surface into the connective tissue. So they are coming from endoderm. The cartilages and muscles which you are already discussed in the anatomy lectures, they are coming from the mesenchyme or mesenchymal tissue of fourth and sixth pharyngeal arches. We are going to discuss in a minute about these arches. Now the opening of the laryngeotracheal diverticulum or lung buds into the primitive foregut becomes the laryngeal orifice, and proliferation, that means rapid formation of mesenchymal tissue of two arches, transform into the three of cartilages of larynx, which is known as thyroid, cricoid and arytenoid. So that mesenchymal tissue from the fourth and sixth pharyngeal arches are going to form thyroid, cricoid and arytenoid cartilages. Now always remember one thing: when the tubal structures are formed during development, they are occluded or closed by the cellular tissue. The cells are closing the tubal structures, and as the further development is taking place, the cells which are present in the luminal part of the tube, they start to die through the process of apoptosis, and this process is known as recanalization, that again a canal is forming. So initially a tubal structure, when it proliferates, the mesenchyme tissue proliferate, it close the lumen of the larynx, which is a temporary closure due to rapid proliferation of laryngeal epithelium. Now those cells which have filled the gap or filled the lumen will start to recanalize it, and the process is known as recanalization. I will talk in a minute now. Now this diagram is showing the development of the pharyngeal arches, actually, that in the cephalic end we have arch like structures which we name as pharyngeal arches, and because of the formation of these arches, there are in between clefts are formed which are known as pharyngeal clefts or pouches. So here we are concerned with pharyngeal arches. We have six pharyngeal arches. In the next diagram I will show you. This is actually what it's showing, that each and single pharyngeal arch has its own cartilaginous component, as you can see here, an cranial nerve component and an arterial component. Along with it contain the muscular tissue. So every arch or these arches, they have their own cranial nerve components, cartilaginous components, arteries and muscles. So it means that every arch is forming some part of the body tissue in terms of nerves, arteries, cartilages and muscular tissue. So we have these arches here. In this diagram it's showing the four arches, and at the level of fourth arch you can see in between, in the center, there is a cleft form which is known as laryngeal orifice, which in future will form the opening of the larynx. And here this is the mesenchymal tissue which is going to form the muscular portion also. And between these arches we have depressions, and these depressions are known as pharyngeal clefts, pharyngeal pouches on the inner side and pharyngeal cleft on the outer side, as you can see here. So in head and neck region, inshallah, we will discuss more about this and components and formation of each arch and the derivatives of each arch. Here we are concerned with fourth and sixth. So important thing to remember here is that every arch has their own components. Here we can see also it's showing second, third and fourth and then sixth arch over here, and in between them we can see there is a laryngeal groove, initially a small groove, and then that small groove will ultimately start to form in a T-shaped manner, as you can see here. In fourth week it's just a groove. In fifth week it start to project in a shape of a T, and here you can see in the sixth week it is almost a T shape laryngeal inlet, and ultimately till the 10th week of development the laryngeal cartilage are very well developed, and the laryngeal orifice is also well formed, which is known as laryngeal inlet, coming from fourth and sixth arches. So laryngeal groove is there, laryngeal groove or inlet is forming more and surrounded by the cartilages over here, and ultimately that groove is shaping into a T-shaped structure, and finally it becomes enlarged and make an inlet of the larynx. What we previously talking about, that we have six arches, 1 2 3 4 and 6. So fifth is generally normally degenerated, and we will talk later on about it. So fourth and sixth are mainly responsible for the formation of larynx. So here we can see a small projection of the epiglottic swelling, and here you can see the cartilages which are going to form a retinoid, and then you can see the inlet also, and here the orifice is enlarged. Here we have epiglottis, and then we have the cartilages which are going to form the arytenoid, plus which we are going to form the thyroid and cricoid cartilages. So what we were discussing about, that initially when the we will see this structure, it is closed because of the epithelial tissue. So the cells die from the center through the process of apoptosis and recanalization. Another again a canal is formed. So recanalization produces a pair of lateral recesses or lateral folds, and these lateral recesses are actually having a space in between them which is known as ventricle of the larynx. So on the upper part and as well as on the lower part we have two folds. The upper part, the fold is known as false vocal cord or vestibular fold, which is going to form the false vocal cords, and below we have vocal fold which is going to form the true vocal cords. So these recesses or folds are bounding the ventricle. In the upper part, vestibular fold, which is going to be the false vocal cord, and below the vocal fold, which is going to be the true vocal cord. And in between that space is known as laryngeal ventricle. Since the musculature of the larynx is derived from mesenchyme of fourth and sixth pharyngeal arches, so all the laryngeal muscle which you have studied, they are supplied by the branches of 10th cranial nerve, that is known as vagus. So it means that fourth and sixth pharyngeal arches giving origin to the 10th cranial nerve portions, which is known as vagus nerve, and its branches are superior laryngeal nerve, which is innervating the derivatives of fourth pharyngeal arch, and recurrent laryngeal nerve is innervating the derivatives of sixth pharyngeal arch. So now easily we can identify, as already you have in anatomy talked about, that there are certain muscles or most of the muscles of the larynx are supplied by recurrent laryngeal nerve, so which is the derivatives of sixth pharyngeal arch, and one or two muscles are supplied by the superior laryngeal nerve, which are having the derivative from fourth laryngeal arch. Now the development of the trachea. So already we have discussed, this is the transverse section of the trachea at the 6th week, and this is the transverse section of the trachea in the 11th week. So already you have discussed that when we talk about the trachea, we have a lining epithelium inside, then we have a cartilage which is C-shaped cartilage, and on its posterior aspect we have a muscle which is a smooth muscle which is known as trachealis. So here it is just showing that inner lining is the epithelium. Outer to the epithelium we have cartilage, developing cartilage, hyaline cartilage, which already you have discussed in a histology lecture, and most outer is we have connective tissue. And as it is growing up, you can see the cartilage, and then the, the portion of the smooth muscle on the back, and the epithelium with the glandular tissue. So the endodermal lining of the laryngeotracheal tube distal to the larynx differentiate into epithelium and glands of trachea and pulmonary epithelium. So again, all these structures, the epithelial structures with glands, are formed by endoderm. And the cartilages, which is the hyaline cartilage, the connective tissue, which is the outer covering of the trachea, and the muscles of the trachea, the trachealis, they are coming from mesoderm. So during its separation from the foregut, the lung buds form the trachea and two lateral outpocketing, which we have already talked, known as bronchial buds. At the beginning of fifth week, that is happening in the fourth week or later fourth week, at the end of the fourth week, the bronchial buds are formed, and early in the fifth week, each of these buds enlarge to form the right and left main bronchi. The right then form the three secondary bronchi, and the left form the two, which are also known as lobar bronchi. At the end of 6 months, approximately 17 generations, or 17, in other words we can say branches, have these bronchi are formed. So it means that they branch like a tree. So till 6 months, 17 generations of subdivisions of these bronchi taking place, and before the bronchial tree reaches its final shape, however, an additional 6 divisions form during the postnatal life. So further, it means that this our lungs are not completely developed at the time of birth. Even till the 10th year of life, they are continuously developing, and the alveoli are also developing. So lung buds appear in the fourth week, divide into two bronchial buds. These two bronchial buds will start to develop and enlarge and become right and left bronchi, and then right and left bronchi divide into secondary bronchi, and then secondary bronchi give 17 generations of or branches of these bronchi, and after the birth or postnatal life, 6 more divisions of these branches are taking place. So here we can see that this is the trachea and this is the bronchial buds. This is splanchnic mesoderm, which is going to form the cartilage or muscular tissue, and this is showing the body wall of which is going to form the somatic mesoderm. Now this diagram is also showing a canal which is known as pericardio-peritoneal canal. It is a canal which is formed cavity in future the pericardium for the heart and peritoneum for the abdominal viscera, and in between two pericardio-peritoneal canals, in between them the trachea as well as the lung tissue is going to be developed. And as it grows more and more, you can see here we can see only lung buds with primary and secondary bronchial buds, while here we can see trachea with primary and secondary bronchial buds which are well developed, and they are lined by the serous membrane, which is the serous membrane of the lung tissue known as pleura. So that part of the serous membrane which is in direct contact with the lung tissue is the visceral part, or which is adherent to the viscera is the visceral part, and which is towards the body wall is the parietal, and in between them the cavity is known as pleural cavity. So their development we will talk more in the few next slides. So this is again we can see trachea, the initial lung buds. As it grows further, it divide into primary, divide into secondary, three on right and two on left, and as we can see here they are growth more, dividing into primary will divide into secondary, and secondary will divide into tertiary. So this is the primary bronchus, then we have lobar bronchi, and then we have segmental bronchi, which are the tertiary bronchi, and further they will divide into different generations, and this is happening in the 5th, 6th and 8th week. So in the 5th week, 6th week and 8th week, almost tertiary bronchi are already formed. So So we have already talked about in the previous lecture of anatomy that right main bronchus is slightly larger than the left one and is oriented in the vertical line of the trachea, and this embryonic relationship persists in the adult. That's why in adult body the right bronchus is mainly present in the line of the trachea. It is more wider, small in length, and having more straighter as compared to the left one. Here we can see 35th day the bronchi are forming into secondary one, and then the secondary will divide into 56th day, they will further divide into tertiary bronchi. So almost 8 weeks of intrauterine life. Tertiary bronchi are, or known as segmental bronchi, they are formed. Now this is a table which is showing the maturation of the lungs. So we divide them into 4 periods. Pseudoglandular period, which is between 5th to 16th week of intrauterine life. Canalicular period, which is 16 to 26 weeks of intrauterine life. Terminal sac period, which is 26 weeks till birth, and alveolar period, which is 8 months to the childhood. So what is happening in the pseudoglandular period, that is early in the 5th to 16th week of intrauterine life, that branching has continues to form terminal bronchioles. So till 8th week we have talked about that we have tertiary bronchi, and then till 16th week of intrauterine life we have terminal bronchioles, but we have no respiratory bronchioles or alveoli present at this time. So it means that till 16th week we don't have any respiratory zonal tissue of the respiratory system. We only have the conducting portion till 16th week of intrauterine life, that is the terminal bronchioles are present. As we move to the canalicular period, which is 16 to 26 weeks, each terminal bronchiole divides into 2 or more respiratory bronchioles, which in turn divide into 3 to 6 alveolar ducts. So it means that till 26 weeks of intrauterine life, the respiratory zonal tissue of the respiratory system is forming. So respiratory bronchioles are there as well as the alveolar ducts are there. That is known as canalicular period. And from 26 weeks till birth, which is known as terminal sac period, terminal sacs, which are the primitive or initial, or in a simple words baby alveoli, they form and capillaries establish close contact to the alveoli. And then we have the alveolar period, which is from 8 months to childhood. Mature alveoli have well developed epithelial endothelial contacts. So the epithelial or air blood connection is very well formed. So these are the 4 periods. Pseudoglandular period, terminal bronchioles are formed. No bronchioles or respiratory or alveoli. Canalicular period 16 to 26 weeks. Respiratory bronchioles are formed as well as alveolar ducts are formed, which are 3 to 6 number at that time. Terminal sac period. In terminal sac period we have primitive alveoli. The primary alveoli are formed and they have a capillaries close contact with them, and in alveolar period well developed mature alveoli are formed and air blood connection is properly established. So as we can see that from almost 26 weeks we have alveolar ducts and respiratory bronchioles. So it is said that almost 7th month, that is 20 almost 28 weeks of intrauterine life, because the respiratory bronchioles or alveolar ducts are formed, or we can say that the respiratory pathway where the gas exchange is going to be taking place is developed. So till that 7th month of intrauterine life, if the baby is premature and developed till 7th month, he or she can survive because they have their respiratory bronchioles and alveolar ducts. So they can survive. But if they are what we say premature birth takes place before 28 weeks of intrauterine life or 26 weeks of intrauterine life, because we don't have any respiratory bronchioles or alveoli, so only conducting portion is there. There is no respiratory portion, no gas exchange is taking place there, so it is difficult for the baby to survive. So the 7th month of intrauterine life is important, because if the baby is premature till 7th month, he or she can survive because it has its respiratory zone developed. So here we can see the diagram which is showing the terminal bronchiole, dividing them into respiratory bronchioles, and you can see here that this is 16 to 26 week of intrauterine life, that blood vessels have a close contact with the respiratory bronchioles. As the development is further take place and terminal sag period begins at the end of 6th and beginning of 7th prenatal months, the squamous epithelial cells has a close contact with the blood. Now, these are the terminal sacs which have a simple squamous epithelium, and here you can see the respiratory bronchiole which have cuboidal epithelium. So you can differentiate the cuboidal epithelium with the simple squamous epithelium. So simple squamous epithelium, which are the terminal sacs or the premature or primitive alveoli, they have close contact now with the capillaries, and if till this time the baby is developed, the baby can survive easily. And this is the alveolar period, or here you can see respiratory bronchiole having cuboidal epithelium, and then we have simple squamous cells, and they have indirect contact with the thin squamous epithelium cells have direct contact with the blood capillaries. Also the lymph capillary is appearing, and these cells, which are simple squamous cells, are known as type 1 alveolar epithelial cells or type 1 pneumocytes, and the alveoli are mature here. Now, development of the pleura or the covering of the lungs, as we have discussed that we have pleuroperitoneal and pleuropericardial fold separates the pericardio-peritoneal canal from the peritoneum and pericardial cavities respectively, and remaining spaces form the primitive pleural cavities. So there are two folds which you are going to discuss in more detail in the lecture of development of the body cavities, that we have seen in the previous slides, that in the lateral side of the trachea and the bronchial buds we have canal which are known as pericardio-peritoneal canals, and because of the formation of two folds which are known as pleuroperitoneal and pleuropericardial folds, they separate these cavities, and remaining cavity in the middle remain as primitive pleural cavities. The splenic mesoderm, as we have discussed already, that splenic means viscera, so it forms the visceral pleura, which is the outer covering of the lung tissue or direct contact with the lung tissue. And here you can see this is a section which is showing the transverse section, which is showing of the embryo, which is showing at the level of the heart and lungs. So you can see the development of the heart, and you can see the lung buds which are lying in the pleuropericardial canals, and here we can see the pleuropericardial folds, this one. So this diagram is showing further development of the pericardio-peritoneal canals into pleural cavities and formation of pleuropericardial membranes. So here you can see here that as the lungs are enlarging in size, and the pleuropericardial membranes are projecting more. They separate, or they, from both the sides, the pleuropericardial membranes connect together. As they are connected together, they make two folds. One cavity or one fold is for the heart, that is pericardial cavity in pericardium. This will be the pericardium, and this will be the pericardial cavity, and other on which is covering the lung tissue will be the pleural cavity and viscera and parietal pleura. So here we can appreciate more, which is well developed, that completely these pleuropericardial membranes or fold, as they project forward, as they are projecting, they are dividing this chest wall into two cavities, and cavity for the heart and a cavity for the lung. The lung cavity is peripleural cavity and heart cavity is pericardial cavity, formed by the folds, and these folds are known as pericardium in case of heart and pleura in case of lungs. So that part of this pleura which is in direct contact with the lung tissue will be the visceral, and the outer, which is towards the body wall or chest wall, will be the parietal, and in between them we have the space which is known as pleural cavity. Here you can appreciate the pericardium, which is completely enclose the heart, and pleura, which is also enclosing the lungs. Initially having a single, and then as the formation of pleuropericardial membrane is formed, dividing into separate cavities. Now the somatic mesoderm layer covering the body wall from the inside becomes the parietal pleura. Already we discussed earlier that somatic means soma, coming from soma. Soma means body. So the mesoderm, which is forming the body wall structure, as the parietal pleura in the previous slide we have seen, is covering the chest wall directly, or the body wall directly. So that is coming from the, or forming by the somatic mesoderm, and the space between the parietal and visceral is known as pleural cavity. And here we can see, so this portion of the pleura which is in direct contact with the lung tissue is known as visceral pleura, and the outer one, which is toward the body wall, is known as parietal pleura, and in between them this space is known as pleural cavity. So technically this membrane is a single layer, but because of the penetration of the lung tissue inside, it appear as two layers, but technically it is a one layer, but because of the invagination of this visceral tissue, it become two. One layer is enclosing the tissue directly, and other is on the outer aspect, and because of this penetration, this is having a cavity is formed, and that cavity is known as pleural cavity. So now we will talk about some congenital anomalies of the respiratory system. So initially we will start with the early development problems, that abnormalities in the partitioning of the esophagus and trachea by the tracheoesophageal septum results in esophageal atresia with or without tracheoesophageal fistulas. Now what is atresia? If there is a tubal structure, and if that tubal structure is completely closed from one side, we name it as atresia. Another term we use is known as stenosis. Stenosis means there is a tubal structure, but its lumen in some place is very much smaller in size. So that is known as stenosed structure. So stenosis means the lumen is very much shorter in relation to its normal diameter, and atresia means complete closure of the tubal structure, and fistula means a connection between two epithelial surfaces of the body. So as we can see, trachea has its own epithelium and esophagus has its own epithelium, but because of abnormal partitioning, which we are going to discuss in the next slide, we will see that esophageal tube and trachea has connection with one another, so their epithelial surfaces are connected together, and that connection is known as fistula. So fistula means connection between abnormal connection between two epithelial surfaces. Stenosis means diameter, or what we say, decrease in the lumen size, and atresia means complete closure. So here we can see this is the developmental GIT or gastrointestinal tract, and this is the developmental respiratory system showing trachea and its bifurcation. So what happened that in the first case, what we can see, this is esophageal atresia. What happened that initially we have seen that these are two tubes which are close together, so these septum which has to separate completely, tracheo-esophageal septum, this septum is not closed completely. It what happened that its proximal part blindly ended, or we can see is as esophageal atresia, that one end is open, other end is closed. While what happened, the distal end has connected or still connected with the trachea, so this is known as tracheoesophageal fistula. So distal part of esophagus is there, so it means that when the baby will aspire, the air can also go to the stomach. While if you give some milk to the baby, because of the closure or atresia of the esophagus, baby will vomit out the fluid or milk, because there is no pathway to go down. Now this is complete esophageal atresia in the proximal part as well as in the distal part. Also there is no fistula or connection with the trachea, but the upper part and lower part. So it means that middle part is completely atresic or not formed. So the baby cannot take any milk or water into the stomach because it is completely closed. So this is known as esophageal atresia. Here what we have seen that there is no atresia, but what happened that esophagus in the lower part or at the near the junction of the trachea is not completely separated from the septum or from the trachea. So the septum has still connection with the trachea. So here we formed a fistula which is known as tracheoesophageal fistula. So proximal and distal part both are connected here. So the problem in this baby will be when the baby will take anything, it can go to its lungs or respiratory pathway because the fistula connection is there. In this type of tracheoesophageal fistula, 100% what the baby will take will go to the respiratory pathway, because proximally tracheoesophageal fistula is there and distally esophageal atresia is there. So what the baby will take will go to the respiratory tract. And here you can see again there are two fistulas, proximal tracheoesophageal fistula and distal tracheoesophageal fistula. So they all the different types you have discussed are the types of tracheoesophageal fistulas or atresia, but they all occur because there is a problem in the tracheoesophageal septum for the male development of its septum. The most common, which is 90% of cases, the abnormality occur is this one, that upper end blindly as atresia and lower end has a connection with the trachea. So these all type of normal. Remember one thing: when we have anomalies of any system of the body, they are not only the abnormalities of that system we have. There must be most of the time the other baby is also suffering from other body system abnormalities. So if there is only one system is involved, surgically it can be treated. But if many abnormalities are there, so generally the baby not survive. Either it is a premature death or even after birth, the baby can die because of the problems if there are multi organs are involved. But if only one system is involved, so this system can be corrected by surgical procedure. Now, other abnormal respiratory distress syndrome or hyaline membrane disease, already you have a tutorial on this and you have discussed more about it. So I'm not going to discuss in detail. When surfactant is insufficient, which is produced by type 2 pneumocytes, the air water blood surface membrane tension becomes high and alveoli will collapse during expiration. So surfactant is not there. So if surfactant is not there, so already as we discussed that if there is no surfactant, it will be difficult for the alveoli to remain their position at the time of expiration. They will collapse. So already you have discussed. So The next is blind ending trachea with absence of lung. So if there is absence of lung, which is known as agenesis of one lung. If there is one lung is absent, that is known as agenesis, again due to developmental anomaly. On the other side, if there is one abscess of the lung and there is a blind ended trachea, that trachea is blindly ending and closed, that is another abnormality. So if there is one lung absence or blind ended trachea, again they require some surgical procedures if is a problem. Abnormal division of the bronchial tree can be there, but again remember one thing, we use two terms in the development. One is known as variability and other is known as abnormality. Variability means that there is something which is a little bit different from the normal population, that like we are talking about bronchial tree have abnormal divisions, like we have talked about that after tertiary bronchi there are 17 generations of bronchial tree taking place before birth. So sometimes what happens that if someone has only 13 divisions, not 17, but he or she has no problem in their breathing for the whole life, that will be known as variability, that the divisions are variable but still they are doing the same normal function. But if there is a problem in the function of that tissue, then we name it as abnormality. Means that normally 17 divisions are there, but if the 13 divisions of an individual are there and he or she are facing difficulty in breathing, it means, or any other problem they are facing because of their divisions, so then we will name it as abnormality. So remember one thing, difference between abnormality and variability. Variability, it is different from the normal population, but the functionally or physiologically it is okay, no problem. But anatomically, if the abnormal deviation is taking place of something and it also causing problem in its physiology or functional component, then it will be known as abnormality. Ectopic lung lobes arises from the trachea or esophagus from additional respiratory parts of foregut that develop independently from the main respiratory system. So sometimes there are extra lung lobes or ectopic lung lobes, not at the they are coming from the same place but they are coming from some other place, that is known as ectopic lung lobes. So they can arise from trachea or they can arise from esophagus. So this type of problem again occur in the early stages when the tracheo-esophageal septum is separating and the lung buds are developing from there. So if their position is changed, we name it as ectopic lung node. We have extra, not at the normal usual site. Another last is applied aspect is congenital cysts of the lungs, which are formed by the dilatation of terminal or larger bronchi. So, if due to developmental issue there is enlargement of the terminal or large bronchi and they become dilated, they will appear as the congenital cyst of the lung tissue. It can occur. There are two things which we are going to discuss. As in the previous lecture, we have also talked about that the because lung has bronchopulmonary segments, so each bronchopulmonary segments have their own neurovascular supply as well as their air passages. So if we have one or two lobes are involved, even the lung will do its function, or even if one lung in the adult life has some disease, the other lung can take its function, which is known as hypertrophy. So that will be the compensatory mechanism, and compensatory hypertrophy will take place and other lung will do its function. But if the lungs are absent in the time of early time of birth and the other lung is also not doing its function properly, then further treatment is required. This is all about development of the respiratory system. If you have question, please ask on email. Thank you very much.